Our gospel comes this morning, the traditional text for Epiphany is from Matthew, the 2nd chapter, beginning with the first verse. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, asking, "Where is the child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I also may come and pay him homage." When they had heard of the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chest, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. The gospel of Jesus Christ. Thanks be to God. Another word for the wise men was the term magi. And magi were a group, a class of people in modern-day Iran, Iraq, and farther east. They were a class that dedicated their lives to studying the skies, the world around them, the plants and animals, the text. They would try to get as many text scrolls of the stories, of the scriptures, of all sorts of peoples around them. They were the intellectuals of the ancient world. And because they knew so much and could predict so many things by looking at the stars about weather patterns, and that sometimes people thought that they were sorcerers. Hence the name magic, our modern word magic or magician, comes from the name magi. They could be very powerful, and rulers looked to them to give them the knowledge and the information so that they could have a good rule and be powerful. They were a distinct group. One day, didn't quite work. I'll get the magi. Maybe we can get Zane squared away if I get the magi here. One day they're looking up the stars, and they had done this for generations, going back hundreds of years. And they're looking at the sky, and they're seeing, yes, there's Orion. Yes, there's the Big Dipper. Cassiopeia in her rocking chair, sort of like a W. But wait, look. We've not seen this before. It is the brightest object in the sky. There was this star. And they went back through their papers and all their calculations. No one had ever calculated the appearance of this star. It was a phenomenon. And so they researched and they realized that the star meant that a king was born in that direction. They wondered, they likely had copies of the Hebrew writings, the Torah and the writings. And so they checked and they ran through it, just scanned it, and we think that star is leading towards what was there, west. Now we say, well, it was a star in the east. Right. If you're in Bethlehem and you look east, you saw the star. But if you're a wise man, you're looking west. And what they were saying, you hear the translation we use today didn't say star in the east. But the original translation meant, I'm a wise man. I am in the east. I saw the star from where I was in the east there. And they headed west where the star was leading them. Now, we don't know how many there were. We say 3 because there were 3 gifts, but likely there were many more magi that made this trip. And along with them would have been servants and retainers and gear for putting up tents when they couldn't find an inn, and food and all sorts of things you need when you're traveling a long way on a camel. And so they began their ride. And on the way, being magi, they were interested in the different plants and different things they encountered, and they would study them. And so sometimes they didn't move as fast as some would like them because these were magi. They're interested in everything about the world. And they looked at the sky and they saw as they moved west that the stars were changing in their pattern and their location from where they started. And they're making note of this. We went 50 miles today and Ursa Major was here. Now it's here. We got to write this down. But the star kept them going, and they began to wonder, what kind of king? What kind of king? They were seeking a king. Where do you find the king? Where do you seek the king? That star will lead us. And they began to speculate and talk amongst themselves, and they thought possibly this isn't just a new king for Israel. This may be the king of kings for all the world. And the further they went, the more they got excited and probably picked up their speed a little bit. Now, I shared with the children this morning, it wasn't just a hop, skip, and a jump from where the wise men were to Bethlehem. It was sort of like starting in Virginia and going to California. You don't do that in a few days. No trains, no planes, no automobiles, no horses. You got your camel. Camels can go pretty fast for a short clip, but they're mainly meant for plodding along, slow and steady to get through that desert. It may have taken them, Lewis and Clark, when they left, they were gone for years. It probably took the wise men at least 2 years from when they started to when they got to Jerusalem. And as they're getting close, they're checking and talking to people, and the most prominent city in the region was Jerusalem. And Herod the Great, who was the king, he had built a theater. He had built a circus, which was where they had horse racing. It was like a stadium. He had built great palaces and buildings, and his most proud building was the temple that he had built on the Temple Mount. And so the wise men come in thinking, we've seen pretty rough territory, but this even challenges our home with all its great buildings. And so they went to the palace. They find Herod. We want to know where the new king is. Herod wasn't happy about that. So he calls his scribes, his wise men, who weren't nearly as wise as these visitors from the east. And they searched around. Now, if they had been really good biblical scholars, they would have known right then what the passage was. They said, yes, it says, as we read this morning, that out of you, Judah, will come one who saves us all in the city or the town of David, which was Bethlehem. The wise men are now seeking. They want to know where they can find the King of Kings. And so they get on their camels and all their servants and all their gear. And they probably were called kings because they dressed so finely and had sort of that rank. They made quite a spectacle as they went through the streets of Jerusalem on the short 3 to 5 mile journey from Jerusalem to Bethlehem. Bethlehem would have been a bedroom community for Jerusalem. They get there, and it's getting late, and it's dark, and they're wondering how they're going to find their houses. Now, 2 years have passed. Jesus and Mary and Joseph aren't still in the barn. Joseph was a contractor, a carpenter. We say carpenter, but in that day and time, carpenters were like contractors, subcontractors. And you needed a carpenter to make something, he'd do that. You need someone to build or fix a wall, he would do that. And there's a good chance, we're speculating, but Herod had a great building project going all over Jerusalem, and he was still working on his temple. There's a good chance that Joseph got up every morning and walked into Jerusalem to work and came home in the evening. So they had a home there in Bethlehem. It's been 2 years since that miraculous birth in the stable. Jesus is now a little toddler. How old is Zane? There you go. What you have seen of Zane is probably how Jesus was acting when he was the same age. Got to realize that. This was a real flesh and blood little boy. The star shows them where the house is. They go in and they see. Now, anyone other would have seen a young mother, a young father, and a very precocious little 2-year-old. The wise men saw something more. They saw through the eyes of faith and love. This was the goal. This is why they had made that long and difficult journey. This was why they were here. In this child, in this little 2-year-old boy, was the one who would rule over all of us, who would establish the kingdom for all time. And they paid homage. These wise men who bowed to no one got down on their knees, and they brought their gifts to the child: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. Gold, because gold was this signifying a king. Kings arrayed themselves in gold. They had lots of gold. Frankincense, because it denoted a king was very sacred being, and frankincense was burned as the scent pleasing to God. And myrrh. Myrrh was a special incense spice that was used to prepare bodies for burial. Even at 2 years old, there was a sign of what was in store for the King of Kings. When they gave their gifts, they praised God. They got on their camels, they got their servants and all the people with them, and they went back, but they went back another way, because an angel in a dream had warned them, don't go back to Herod. And so instead of taking I-64, they decided to take Route 17. And they went back. They found what they were looking for. Where do we find God? We find God where God wants us to be. The question could also be phrased, where does God find us? God finds us when we are in the midst of sharing God's love, be it Night's Welcome, be it our USDA program, be it in times and moments when we reach out to others who have a need and we try to help them. God finds us when we are engaged in loving our neighbor. We find God in the midst of doing that loving. It's really the same question. God is not just here. God is not just in our homes. But God will always be wherever love is being given and received. That is the story and the meaning of the wise men.